The ability to save files into SharePoint and store them there can, at its simplest, be just a glorified LAN or network share, possibly even just like saving it into your own hard drive. But that really doesn't take full advantage of what SharePoint can do. We know that using the basic features of the libraries can also be helpful. Just the ability to manage and see things and store different information, copy them back and forth, and access them from a common location, those do have benefits. But when we really talk about the benefits of working with documents within SharePoint, a majority of people who have experienced it say it's about those document management features, the ones that set libraries apart from lists and allow us to manage documents. Primarily, it's three different features: check-in and check-out, versioning, and content approval. It's important to remember that none of these have to be used, and if they're not, then again, SharePoint is a lot like saving it to a folder. People can simply open it up, edit it, and when they make a change and save it, it replaces the original file. But when we do use them, either one at a time or in any combination, SharePoint becomes a very powerful document management tool, offering us not only the ability to see who did what when, but also to better control who can see what content. This can be very confusing, though, especially when all three of these things are happening at once. So we want to go through the process of working with a document through all three of these features at the same time, so I can kind of identify for you what's happening when and what's important as part of the process. After you work with it a couple of times on your own, it'll seem like a piece of cake. It really isn't that difficult. But if you're not familiar with them, or if you haven't seen them before, they can start to blend together and get a little bit confusing. So let's get rid of that confusion before it has a chance to start. And we're going to do so by working with the SharePoint 2013 User Training Outline document that was created in an earlier video. It does not matter to me which file you have. It doesn't even have to be a Word document. You just need to have a Word, Excel, or PowerPoint file that you can work with. This one happens to be Word. So here's our scenario. We are users of this library, and for some reason, we need to go in and make an edit to this document. We have editing permissions, and the library has been set up to use all three of our document management features: check-in and check-out, versioning with both major and minor drafts, as well as content approval. So what we know is whenever somebody wants to edit a document and check-in and check-out is enabled, you must check it out. It's not an option. So when we move to the Open menu and we say that we do want to edit this, we can see that it's going to launch Microsoft Word, the authoring application. It automatically knows which application to use and will open it into the application. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is get out of the default view and go back to the print layout view that probably looks a little bit more familiar to everybody. I want you to notice, first of all, that I'm using 2013. And 2013 versus Word 2010 and even 2007 will look slightly different for all of these features just because they work differently, and your operating system will make a difference as well. What's important to know is that at some point in time, SharePoint is going to tell you that you must check out the file. With older versions of Office and Windows, a window will actually display that says, you must check out this file before you can edit it, and all you can do is say okay. It's not a yes or no, it's just information. You say okay, and it opens you up into Word, like what has happened here. Because of the combination of software and operating systems that I have, it simply opens it up, but it gives me a comment at the top that says, to modify this server document, you must check it out. And there's simply a button that we can click or tap that says check it out. And as soon as we do that, that warning goes away. Now, at this point, we basically are done with SharePoint. Nothing else here has anything to do with SharePoint, and we can do anything that we would normally do with a Word document. We're not going to take a lot of time to do that. We just need to make a couple of changes. So I'll go ahead and make the title a little bit bigger and bold and maybe put it in the middle just to change it a little bit. Now, I want to point out that we do have a lot of features available from within Office because things are integrated. So if we click on File and go to the Backstage, we can see that this is the name of the document and that it's actually coming from the team site in the You Got It subsite in the Shared Documents folder. We also can see the option to work with checkout right from here. We could choose to check it in right now. That would take any changes we have made, apply them, and upload them to the library so that everybody else could see them. Right now, anybody who wants to look at this document from SharePoint cannot open it in edit mode because I have it checked out. They can only open it in read mode, but they're certainly able to still read the document. As soon as I check it in, that copy will be replaced with my updated copy. Another option could be that I started to work on this and said, oh, you know what? I don't have time to do this, or I really don't want to change the document. So we have an option from the backstage to discard checkout. That means throw away all of the changes in this copy that is ours, and at the same time, release the copy that's in the library so that others can edit it without making any changes to the one that's still in the library. So I wanted to show you that this information is here because sometimes people feel like they're stuck and they try to go back to SharePoint and figure out how to do things. But we can do all of this right from within Word. Now, we did make some changes. So we're going to go ahead and say, I'm done. I haven't even saved it yet, but I'm kind of lazy, so I'm not going to save it first. I'm just going to close out of Word. When I do that, not surprisingly, because this is what always happens, Word comes up and says, well, do you want to save your changes? We're going to say yes, we do want to save. This, of course, has nothing to do with SharePoint either. What happens next will have to do with SharePoint. Now this is where we get the option to say, do you want to check it in now? Word is talking to SharePoint. It says, oh, wait a minute, you check this document out, and others are currently looking at the old copy. Do you want others to be able to see your changes now, yes or no? And you might be saying, well, why would I not have them see it? If I've made the changes, yes, I want them to see it. Well, if I'm going to be editing this document maybe for a week, I may not want to post every one of my changes every time I save the file. So if I say no, my changes are saved to my copy, but they are not visible to those who are still looking at the original in SharePoint. I can do that as long as I want, a day, a week, a month, a year. But eventually, when I'm ready and I want people to see the changes I've made, that's when I'm going to say yes to this. I want to save it, and I want to check the document back into SharePoint. As soon as we click yes, check-in and check-out is done. We had to check it out in order to edit it. We just checked it back in, which is going to release it for everybody else to use. So the first of our 3 different options that we have as far as document management goes is basically done. Now what we're looking at is showing up because we have versioning enabled. It says, okay, when you check this in, if you didn't have versioning on, we would just check it in and replace the original file with your new one. Just like saving a document that's saved on the network. It replaces the old one with the new. But because we have versioning, SharePoint is giving us some options. If major versioning was all that was enabled, we would not see the options up here at the top. It would just save it from version 1 to version 2. But because we have major and minor versioning turned on, we have the option. Do we want to take this from 1.0 to 1.1, meaning our changes are just a draft? Or did we make changes and we also want to let everybody who can see the library see these changes? In other words, publish our document. Remember, the difference between a draft and a published version, or major versus minor, usually is who can see the changes. With a minor draft, it's usually only the people with editing permissions that can see the draft. But everybody who has access rights to the library can see a major version. Now, I want to show you how to publish differently, so we're going to save this as 1.1. This part at the top only shows up because major and minor versioning is turned on. If any kind of versioning is turned on, we get the ability to add version comments. Now, this is not a required field, but it would be if I had my way, because this is where you're going to create the history so that people can go back and look at a document and see what's the difference between 1.0, 1.1, 2.0, 3.0, without having to actually go in, open the documents, and try to compare them. So here I'm going to say basically what is obvious to me, but not to anybody else because they didn't see me work. And I'm going to say formatted title. This doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be drawn out. It just has to be descriptive. Tell people what it is you did when you made changes to this document before checking it back in. Now, the checkbox at the bottom really confuses a lot of people. It says, keep the document checked out after checking in this version. And you go, what? I thought we already did that. I thought the very first window we saw before this said, do you want to check it in, yes or no? And we said yes. Why is it asking me again? You need to look at this carefully. It says, do you want to keep the document checked out after checking in this version? So if I were working on this for a week, but I've made some significant changes, and I wanted to let people on my team see the changes I've made thus far, but I still want to continue working, that's when I would check this box. That would create version 1.1. They could see the changes I've made thus far, but it would stay checked out to me, but I don't have to go back into SharePoint and open it up and check it out a second time. It saves me a step. Now, hopefully you can understand why I think it's important to go through all of this so that you understand what all of these different prompts really mean. So we've said to check it in. We've said to check it in as version 1.1, a minor version or a draft. We've added a comment. We're not going to keep it checked out. We're going to say okay, and we're going to let Word and SharePoint do their thing, which is that it's simply going to close Word because that's what I told it to do, and it's going to display my browser, which has been actually sitting open in the background this whole time. When we opened this document by clicking on Edit, nothing happened to SharePoint or my browser. It just opened Word on top of it. Now we need to take a look at some of the intricacies that happened when we did all of the things that we just did by simply working with the document in Word like we normally would. But I think what we'll do is go ahead and stop this as part 1 and pick that up with part 2.